Ah, T.S. Tiasha, thank you. Ah, well done, Paige. And a deal. Well done. Thank you, Tasha. That's very useful. Okay, right. We'll give it just a couple of minutes and then we'll start. So we've got about a half full at the minute. Maybe some people are struggling to connect on. Okay, right. So we can wait no longer. Let's crack on. Welcome everybody. Happy Friday. We made it. Where does it go? So what we're going to do today, just seeing if there's any messages coming from your colleagues. Nothing so far. Okay, so what we're going to do today, well, it depends a little bit on how much time we can make up. So what I'd like to do today is, so you've been working on your Unit 26 assignments for me. So thank you for everyone who submitted them. They're looking pretty good. So just what I want. The idea is really that if you're writing them or handwriting them, then at the end of each week that you'll submit that work to me. So if you're word processing, that's brilliant as well. But really at the end of the week, again, I need a good sort of document that you can send to me. So what I'd like to do today is make sure that we finish up of task 3 for that first unit. And then if we get time, we'll just finish off some of the cardiovascular stuff we did the other day. And we'll just do a little bit of questioning your understanding of that so far. But I want to kind of blend the two courses, but I wanted to get this employability kicked off quite sort of sharply to begin with. So first of all, there's been a few people who have managed to do their BKSB, but not everyone. So if you haven't done your BKSB, your initial assessment and then the subsequent work required, can you make a note on your phone now to make sure that you give yourself an alarm in an hour and 50 minutes time to say you need to get down and do those assessments for maths and English. So can you just take a bit of time now? I think on my list of people here, I think about half have done that. I think there's another half who haven't. So if that's you, can you just take your phone out, make a note, and make sure that at the end of this session that you log on to the BKSB site and you complete the tasks that were required. Okay, so that seems like everyone. Okay, so let's go. Okay, so let's start this this unit. So basically, yesterday you did part 1 and 2, and some of the stuff that came through was really good. Today I want to get part 3 done very, very quickly, and then we'll get the last bit done at the start of next week. So without further ado, let's press on. So here's my reminder. Did you complete the BKSB task? Hopefully you all did. If you haven't, you've hopefully made a note on your phone to do that. So you should have done this. So the task today is to complete Unit 26, Assignment Briefing Part 2. And you should have done these things already for me. So I asked if you could send your work for Part 1.1 and 1.2, which was about the purpose of the CV and covering letter. So that was the written task. So that was you just were either writing onto a piece of blank paper or onto the template that I sent. You were then asked to do part 2.1 and 2.2, where it was the spider diagram and the notes associated with that. So you should have those. Even if you took a photo and sent it to me yesterday, you should have the physical work. So that should have been done and in the bank. By the end of this session, hopefully it wouldn't take too long. By the end of this session, we should all have completed parts 3.1 and 3.2. So this is related to referees, references. Sometimes they're called referees, not the blow your whistle ones. So this is about knowing the importance of references in the CV. You have one task when you're asked to outline the importance of references in the CV, and then the other task, you're going to describe what makes a reference suitable for including in a CV. This work, you've actually got a worksheet. So on the back of assignment 26, there should be a worksheet which you'll be able to fill in at the end of this session. So what I'll need is for you to have a rough sheet that you're going to complete as we go along for a couple of slides, and then you're going to have a bit of time to complete in neat that worksheet. And then once you've done that, I'll get you to take a picture and then just send it to me. So if you haven't got the assignment for some reason, I have emailed it to you today. So you should have one way of completing it. So we come to the task. So this task again, I've slightly, well, not, I haven't really massively changed this one. So can I just get you to take your assignment 26, and I'd just like you to read this task for me if you could. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to work through that, just to read it and see what's required if you could. So I'm going to sort of switch off for 2 minutes whilst you just read through that. Okay, so go. Okay, hopefully you've had time to read through the copy there. So the we looked the other day, you went to find jobs that were in your local area, and I asked you to identify three suitable jobs that you could potentially apply for. So hopefully in your mind you've got the idea of these jobs that you'll be applying for. So it asks you to kind of reference that job advert, but as much as anything, just consider 2 people who you could provide you with a suitable reference. So someone who can vouch for your experience, someone who can vouch for your qualities as a person, someone who can vouch for your education, and essentially sort of say that yes, what you're stating in your CV is true. So what you're going to do in a minute, or 10 minutes or so, is you're going to prepare notes on the worksheet that's at the back of your assignment. You're going to imagine that we're going to have a recorded discussion. So the notes that you're creating have actually got to be quite full. So I'm looking for really quite full descriptions here. So you're going to outline why references are important in support of job applications. So why do we supply them? Why do employers request them? You're going to describe what makes a referee choice good or bad. So who are suitable people to choose, who are unsuitable people to choose and put forward. And then lastly, you're going to find me 2 references. So you're going to provide 2 written descriptions of suitable referees for a job role that interests you, and say why you chose them. So we're going to consider why, particularly for that job role, that person is going to be suitable. So the most important thing I want is that you get some really good quality notes, and at the end of the session you're able to either file them and send them to me with the other work you've done this week, or photograph them, pop them on a PDF and then email them to me, or you complete a Word document and you can email that to me. So you've got a few different ways of submitting, but the most important thing is that we submit it today. Okay, so first of all, I've just got a little note on what does a reference ask for. Well, this is an example of quite a sort of in-depth reference that someone was completed. I think this was an American one I nicked off the internet. But here we've got ideas about what a reference asks for. If you were to summarize the top 3 most important things that a reference asks for, what would you say? Can we just pop that in the chat box? What do you think as a group are the most important things that references ask for? So just pop that in the chat box if you could. I'll open it up so I can see you. There we are. Okay, anyone? Okay, yeah, it's a good one coming in. Yeah, someone said timekeeping. Yeah, so we look at sort of punctuality and just those sort of general good housekeeping. Yeah, I would say that's something that an employer could comment upon. Good. Attitude, yeah. So we might have ask for people's sort of general attitude and willingness to work. Good. Yeah. So a couple of good ideas coming in. So there's this. So here this one's quite an in-depth one. So it's sort of grading. If you look at the top, just so you can all see where I'm sort of pointing towards, I'll just sort of outline it a little bit. So this one sort of very specifically asks, are there any concerns about any of these things? So particularly attendance, punctuality, or reliability. Now, this sort of reference is becoming a little bit less common, partly because if employers have to give a reference that's valid and fair, so they shouldn't be seen to be kind of jeopardizing a job hunter's efforts by stating things they can't back up. So if, for example, an employer says your attendance was poor and you subsequently don't get the job, unless they've got very clear records to say your attendance was poor or your punctuality was poor, you could potentially sue them. So a lot of them have to be very, very careful and make sure that all of the things that they say are absolutely true. So the idea is that past employers can't be stating things that are particularly kind of malicious or very much against you, unless they can really back it up with evidence. So I think we're absolutely right that employers can ask to look at things like timekeeping, attitude, particularly attendance records. But also they're really there to vouch for you as a person, so to back up your qualities and confirm what's on your CV. So we'll move on to this next slide. So a reference is important really mainly because it confirms facts stated in the CV and covering letter. So if I said I've been managing a chain of 15 gyms over the last 3 years, I've been tremendously successful over these last 3 years, and I've increased profit by 200%. That makes me sound like the man to have. So an employer could potentially ask for a reference to confirm or deny that. So the reference will confirm facts stated in the CV. So they might say what role were they doing, what was they could even confirm responsibilities within that role, just to make sure that the person applying for the job isn't maybe getting a little bit carried away with their claims. A reference is an important part of the application process. It shows that you're willing to be, or you're willing to contact, you're allowing people to contact your past employers. It kind of suggests that you've left with a good relationship, that your talents were recognized, and that you're happy to let others speak on your behalf. It can question on aspects such as employment history, on aspects of employment history such as attendance, which needs to be documented, punctuality, and also disciplinary record. So again, all of these things have to be able to be evidenced by an employer. So an employer might choose, if they're sort of, for example, let's say they felt you were, let's say if as an employer you felt one of your members of staff was maybe a little bit lazy, had a bit of a bad attitude with customers, it's difficult to state that in a reference. So if you're in that position, sometimes you can just give a statement of facts. Say so and so worked for me for 6 months. They started on this date. They left on this date. Their job role was this, and you can kind of almost sort of state that without really discussing their character. But so it's important that when we choose references, we're happy that they're people that can speak positively about us, that are going to confirm good things, and that we're happy to have speak on our behalf. So a reference is there to confirm facts on the CV and the covering letter. It's part of that application process, but it can also confirm aspects of our employment history, such as attendance, punctuality, and disciplinary record. So you're going to do, so the note at the bottom I've just put is references have to be fair and accurate, otherwise the employee could claim for damages in court. So for example, if you were, let's say you were an employer and you had, let's say, a personal sort of vendetta against someone. So you could have an employee that maybe you didn't particularly like. They could go and get another job. If that employer asked you for a reference and you gave one which was just nasty, maybe untruthful, that person could sue you and claim for damages in court if they subsequently lost that job. So it's important, if you're ever in a position of being an employer, that you bear that in mind, that you have to be fair and you have to be accurate when you're giving these references. So here's a task I'm going to get you to do. So this concept of references is something that you're going to describe to me. Now, in blue, so you're going to answer the question, why is a reference important? Now, you're going to start with that note in bright blue. So it says a reference is important so that a potential employer. What you've got to do is you've got to finish that sentence, use 2 further sentences to explain why a reference is important, but you've also got to use each of those 4 words in that text box on the right. You can add anything you like, but you have to use each of those 4 words on the right. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is take a rough piece of paper, or you can just write it into the chat box, I don't mind, but I want you to just take, I reckon you can do that in 3 minutes, okay? So I'm just gonna pause my presentation. You're gonna complete that. And what I'd like, if a couple of people could just write it into the chat box, a couple of people are pretty good at submitting things in. So you're completing a rough example into the chat box now, okay? I think my internet is going, so. Okay, so that's my my alarm gone. So we've had our 3 minutes up. Apologies for my writing in the chat box. I've just seen my spelling. It's dreadful. So I do apologise. So a couple of people have come in privately on the chat box with some good ideas. So yeah, I think we've got a good one here. So a reference is important so that a potential can confirm details in the CV and covering letter. This is good. They can ask if the facts stated are true and also comment upon a person's character, suitability for the role, or disciplinary record. Yeah, so some good ideas. So essentially just trying to get across those key points, that you're asking for that confirmation. That confirmation is that the facts that are stated in the CV and the covering letter are true. So think about the sort of things people might be saying. So the job roles that they held, their responsibilities that they had, the successes they had, maybe even the prizes they were awarded. You might also use the reference to confirm that a person is of good character. And you can also get some details about disciplinary records. So some jobs, that's absolutely critical. So you might ask if there's any sort of outstanding disciplinaries that were taken against that member of staff. Good. Well done. A couple of good ideas coming in there. So let's move on. So let's think about the type of person who you're going to use as a referee. So remember, you're going to provide for me 2 referees at the end. These are people who you would trust to give you a suitable reference. So I guess when we think about it, they're kind of these people who can comment positively upon us, aren't they? So if we look at what we want, so we're going to get people who can comment positively about us. So particularly, we want people who are going to comment upon us in a professional capacity. So really, these people are ones that we can trust to comment upon positively about our skills, our qualities in relation to that job role. So we might want people who are able to comment upon our general character, our trustworthiness, our hardworking nature, our punctuality, our teamwork, all these kind of things. So we should be choosing people who we've displayed our positive qualities in front of, and also who we trust to be able to convey them well, who are able to get them across to a potential employer. So ideal examples are these people, tutors and teachers of any capacity, but we can also look at people anyone who we've had that kind of professional relationship with. So we may also get other previous employers and colleagues. We may also get people who we've worked with in any sort of developmental capacity. So when you're charged with a question to say who makes a suitable referee, you can say anyone that can comment positively upon our skills or qualities in relation to a job. So we might choose tutors or teachers, previous employers or colleagues are ideal. So I'm going to get you to do a little bit of another bit of writing for me in a second. So let me just snap out of that. So this is going to be what I'll get you to do in a while. You're going to ask who makes what makes us a referee suitable. So can I just get you, whilst I've got this screen up, to just make a quick note? Imagine in 5 minutes time, you're going to have to freestyle the question. You're going to have to explain what makes a referee suitable. And I just want you to make 3 notes of what you're going to include in that question answer. So it's going to be people who can comment positively, the sort of things they can comment positively on, and then the type of people that they're going to be. So it's people who can comment positively, what they can comment on, and then the type of people that they're going to be. So just make 3 notes for me, please, because you're going to get this question in a minute and you're going to be asked to write your answer. Resume recording. Okay, so let's just hide my annotations. Okay, so we now ask the question, who don't you want? So you're going to be asked to describe in a minute who don't you want providing your referee. Now that should be fairly easy for you. You probably identify people who might make fairly useless referees. So the people we don't want are people who can't vouch for our skills or qualities in relation to our job and can't vouch for it in that independent way. So someone who's a family member is obviously going to be biased towards you. You know, if you ask my mum whether I can do a job properly, she'll say I should be Prime Minister or something. Well, she probably won't, but so a family member is really too close, so they've been unable to see them in that work environment. In the same way that friends also are probably not ideal references to call upon, unless they hold very high standing in the community. And also just people that you don't know. So you have to have someone that you've had a relatively close relationship with, someone who can at least check upon your work and kind of recognize you. So, you know, let's say if you've been working in Tesco's, for example, a line manager might be a more suitable reference than maybe an area manager for the store. So you want someone you've got that sort of quite close relationship with, who's seen you in action, can see how you get on with people, and has got a sort of quite a close sort of view on your qualities. So your task now, you're going to write a quick piece for me. What you've got there, again, in a bright blue, you've got a sentence that you're going to complete. This should be relatively straightforward. So here we've got this sentence in bright blue. So an unsuitable referee would be someone who would be, and what I'm going to get you to do is to complete the explanation of who may be an unsuitable reference using a minimum of 2 sentences and a maximum of 3. You've got to use all the words in that text box. Okay, so unable, so that should be fairly straightforward. You could say an unsuitable referee would be someone who would be unable to vouch for me as a person, would be unable to back up their views on my qualities, whatever. So you're going to use the word unable, vouch, qualities, job, family, friends, and unreliable. I've got unreliable at the end just because I applied for just a little part-time role a while ago, and I was offered it. It was just sort of, a couple of hours every few weeks, doing a little bit of extra work, and I kept getting a note that my reference wasn't completed yet, and I thought, God, what people are saying about me? And it was just that it had been sent through to a colleague who was just being absolutely useless. So I had a reference that was waiting for a potential employer, and my colleague was just sort of sitting on it with his emails. He's just not very good with tech. So think about who also would be quick to respond to these types of requests, people who've got time to respond to these requests, people who are good with their own personal admin. So that's your job. You're completing in the light blue. An unsuitable referee would be someone who would be da 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 da. So you're providing a minimum of 2 additional sentences, a maximum of 3, but you're using all of those in the text box on the right hand side. I think that's going to take you 4 minutes. So I'm going to set a timer and let you crack on with that. Any questions, just pop them in the chat box, and we'll hopefully get this done. So there we go. Get onto that now. If you can send your examples to me in the chat box, that would be great, or you can just email them to me as well. Brilliant. Okay, so well done, everyone. I've got a couple of thumbs up to say you've finished. So hopefully you found that fairly useful. So yeah, again, the slide before is really sort of looking at, say, well, who do you want? So it's about having someone who can positively comment upon you, or comment positively about you and your skills in relation to a job role. So someone who is in a professional position, someone who has seen you working. So a tutor or a teacher is ideal, particularly if you haven't got a long kind of history of employment. You also might ask for previous employers or colleagues. You might also ask people you've done things like, if you've ever done any kind of voluntary work, any sort of any kind of additional sort of work or tasks of a relatively serious nature, where you've had to assume a position of responsibility. So whether it's some sort of coaching, any kind of training of anyone. So these are the kind of people that we want to look up. As we move on, you've just answered me this. So who don't you want? So an unsuitable referee would be someone who would be unable to vouch for you as a person, unable to vouch for your qualities, etc., etc., etc. So you should have a nice sort of rough version of this ready to go. So we've now done 3 things. You're now going to have the opportunity to put them in neat. So what I've asked for is that you now are going to complete worksheet 3. So you're going to go to a slightly, I'll show you exactly what you're working on. So what you should all have is this. So the Unit 26 assignment sheet, it looks like that. So you should be seeing that on the screens in front of you. Task 1 we did yesterday. Task 2 we did yesterday. So task 2 was the little spider diagram. Now you're going to do task 3. So task 3, there is a little worksheet right at the back. So where we've posted you the worksheets, you've got something that looks like that. So the ideal is that you write into that worksheet. If for whatever reason the worksheet isn't with you, or you've got a big coffee mug stain on top of it or whatever, you can handwrite it onto a neat sheet of paper. But like yesterday, again, I need the unit, I need the criteria that are addressed with each question, and it needs to be very neatly written. If you're using the worksheet, complete on the worksheet, and if you need extra space, just put another sheet in the back. Or if you're word processing, just edit this document and then trim out the right bit and then send it to me on a Word document. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to work on that right now. And then what I'd like is if you can send me your answer to the first 2. So we're going to work on that for 10 minutes, and then we'll just regroup. We'll have a quick break, but during that break, you're going to send me your work. Okay. So I'm going to leave that up there. If anyone hasn't got that document or is struggling to know what to complete, contact me in the chat box. Okay. So you've now got 10 minutes to complete that first bit, worksheet 3, up to what makes a referee unsuitable. So those 3 questions. Why is a reference important? What makes a suitable referee? What makes a referee unsuitable? So all those 3 questions you've just done in rough. So now you're just writing it out in neat. So I'm going to start my timer. You've got 10 minutes. I'm going to switch my video off so I can do some other work, and I'll let you get to it. A couple of things coming in the chat box, so I'll attend to those as they do. Otherwise, good luck. So hopefully you managed to get most done. So just to be clear, I've got so we're on Unit 26. It's the Learning Outcome 3, and it's the worksheet at the back of that assignment you should have in a pack with you. So you're really just referencing those 3 things. Why is a reference or referee? Why is a reference important? What makes a suitable referee? And what makes a referee unsuitable? So hopefully you've had time to do all 3, but I think as a minimum we should have had time to complete those first 2. So well done all who's completed that. A couple of people have sent me stuff in whilst I've been gone. Let's just go through the last bit of this task, and then I can we'll sort of set up what we're going to do after the break. So we're nearly there. Actually, we've done most of what we need to do. So you've completed your tasks. You've completed your worksheet, the first bit, and now on the back of that sheet, there's a little task which asks you to identify 2 referees. So what you're going to do, you're going to identify 2 people who are suitable referees for you, who can vouch for your the honesty of your CV and your personal statement, who can vouch for your qualities as an individual, the people who are going to be reliable and able to respond quickly to any requests for references. So we're going to have a quick break, a quick sort of refreshment break. And whilst you're breaking, I want you to try and get the details for those 2 people. So you're going to need a name. You're going to need their employer, who you're going to contact them through, and you're going to need a contact number or an email address that we can get them on. So that's your task. Identify these 2 people and their contact details, and then we will have those 2 people lined up ready to go once we come back from a break. So it's about 8 minutes past now. If I can get you back at 18 minutes past, all ready to go and refreshed, I'll look forward to seeing you then. Okay. Okay, welcome back everyone. So thank you for those people that messaged me in the break. Hopefully I've covered everything and everything is pretty clear. So I asked you during the break to find yourself 2 references, 2 people who you think are suitable to vouch for you. So what I'd like is now for you to just write each person's name at the top of your sheet. So the back of that document that we saw earlier just asked you to identify 2 references. Now, what I'd like you to do with them is this. I want to list each person. So write them down now, the people who are your suitable references. So once you've written them at the top of your sheet, I'd like you to take one person or one of those people and what I'd like you to do is put the following information underneath their name. So number 1, you should have ready to go their details, but I want their relationship to you, i.e. what are they? Were they your previous manager, some form of mentor, some form of teacher, any kind of role that they, tell me how they came into your life and what your relationship is. So remember, we can't use family members, we can't use friends. They have to be someone we know in a professional capacity, an education capacity, or some other sort of capacity where we might have met them doing something that shows our positive qualities, if you like. So maybe sort of volunteer work, coaching, that kind of thing. So put down their relationship to you. And then importantly, I want you to say why they'll be able to comment positively on your skills and quality. So why do you think they'll be able to comment positively on you? What have you done that means that they'll look on you in a positive manner? And then lastly, I want you to explain how they can vouch for your character and what you believe that they'll say. It could just be literally that you turned up for work, you didn't get in trouble. So sometimes that's enough. An employer just sometimes wants that, that this person is good with people, they turn up on time, they see it out. So that's your job. Okay, so just choose one of those people, and I want you to list them, explain their relationship to you, why they'll be able to comment positively about your character, and how they can vouch for your character. Okay, so that should just take about 3 or 4 minutes. So just get down and do that now. I'll give you that time. And then once we've done one person, I'm going to flick over and do a bit of the cardiovascular system just to sort of test your knowledge. As no one's got in contact with me, I'll assume things are good. So just to confirm then, what I'm going to need from you is that you're going to do one of the following. You're going to post parts 1, 2, and 3 to me. So that was the explanation of what was in a CV and a covering letter, the spider diagrams. The first one was writing the importance of the CV and covering letter. Number 2 was the spider diagrams, showing the components of those two things. And number 3 is the work that you've just done for me now on references. So you're going to, if you've written those out, you're going to post them to me. So we've given you an envelope with my address on it. All you do is just pop that work in, make sure it's neat, your name is at the top of each one, and then you send it to me. If you've done it electronically, just pop it all on one email and then just email it over to me. What we can't have is just a photograph. So if you've scanned your work and you've reframed it into a PDF, that should be okay, as long as it's got your name at the top and it's neat and appropriate and well formatted. If all I've got is a photo, that's not enough. So you'll need to send me the physical work, okay? So those are the two main ways, or if you've just simply word processed everything, that as well is great, but do make sure your name is on the work. So just try and put it all on one email, parts 1, 2, and 3, and then send it to me. So you're going to finish off that final reference when we finish today. So it should just take you 5 minutes at the end, and then it's all done. So I'll reiterate that's what you're going to send to me, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So any questions, just pop them in the chat box. So I'll assume you're all up to speed, and we could say goodbye to that part. Part 4 is going to be you writing formally your CV. So a couple of you have done a little bit for me already, but we'll spend a little bit more time with that next week. I'll give you some time in the session. So we don't need to rush ahead and you write a CV and you write a covering letter yet. That's for next week. As long as we're up to speed with parts 1, 2, and 3, you can post them to me in the next couple of days. That's brilliant. Okay, right, well done. So without further ado, I'll shut that down, and we're just going to have a quick recap and finish off the cardiovascular system. So where we got to the other day was near the end. I'm just going to make sure I can bring that up. So here we are. So this is just a little recap, actually, and it picks up on some of the work we were doing just about the cardiovascular system. So the part 2, in part 1, we described the location, the structure and function of the heart. We described the difference between the systemic and pulmonary circulation. We described the structure and function of blood vessels. And today, what I want to do is just very quickly define blood pressure and identify the different classifications of blood pressure. So you might want to take a separate sheet of paper and just make notes. This presentation, I sent out most of it to you the other day, and I'm trying to relate it to your handbook. So let's just press on. Let's just get this covered. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you to fill in the section from your Unit 1 anatomy workbook that finishes that first section. So last time we looked at these two bits, the pulmonary circulation and the systemic circulation. So can someone in the chat box just define for me what the systemic circulation does? Anyone? Pop it in the chat in the chat box. What does the systemic circulation do? So we've got these two parts of circulation on the screen here. Okay, someone's come in privately with the systemic is responsible for blood to the body, which is good. So that's fine. So if we imagine we start at the right ventricle, what you can see is deoxygenated blood finding its way up to the lungs via the pulmonary circulation. That becomes oxygenated, and that oxygenated blood returns to the left atrium. The left atrium passes it through to the left ventricle, which then pumps it all out to the body via the systemic circulation. So the systemic circulation gives oxygenated blood to the body, and then once it's been delivered to the working muscles, it returns via our veins to the heart. So you've got a lovely picture of those two types of circulation there. So the systemic is responsible for delivering blood to the body. The pulmonary circulation is responsible for delivering blood to the lungs and oxygenating it. So our blood pressure is the bit that I need you to fill in today. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time for this in a second. So the blood pressure is the pressure exerted on the walls of the arteries by blood. Now, can anyone tell me what the measurement of normal blood pressure is? Does anyone know what normal blood pressure is measured as? Can anyone pop that in chat box? Anyone? Okay, so let's 76 and 100. Okay, so what we need two measurements. So what we get is these two measurements related to our systolic pressure. So what you'll see with blood pressure, what people will normally write it as is something a bit like, so you'll see something like this. So say 120 over 80. So that's kind of classic normal blood pressure. So essentially what's being measured is the driving force of blood through your blood vessels. So if we think of a heart, so a heart beats, when it beats, it pushes blood powerfully into arteries. Now, if those arteries, let's say they're nice and wide, nice and sort of bit sort of pliable, a little bit elastic, that's great. When that blood pumps through, the artery just widens slightly and then it recoils. Now, if that artery is tight, it's a bit like when you pop your finger over the end of a hose, the pressure is much, much greater. So when arteries are slightly narrowed, the pressure is much, much greater. In the same way that when the heart starts beating much harder and much faster, that pressure is much greater. And if arteries aren't allowed to expand slightly when that heart beats, the pressure in the system gets high. So we've got two measurements here. One you can see is very high, one is a bit lower. So the one that's very high is the pressure in our system when the heart beats. We call that systolic pressure. It's called systole, systolic pressure. When the heart beats, it brings a wave of pressure up into that body. So normal is 120. We measure it in millimeters of mercury. When the heart relaxes, we call that the diastolic pressure. So the heart beats, wave of pressure shooting through the system. When the heart relaxes and it refills, if there's pressure still in that system, That's not a good thing. We want there to be a kind of a wave. So we want the idea that when the heart relaxes, pressure in the system decreases. So the one we're most interested in is that diastolic pressure. The diastolic pressure here is 80 millimeters of mercury. Now, in the fitness industry, we talk of what's called a 100 rule. So if someone's diastolic pressure is over 100, we don't allow them to exercise with us unless they've been given clearance by their GP or they're on some kind of a GP referral scheme. So that suggests that the pressure in the system is very high. It means there's an increased likelihood of a stroke or heart attack, or creating damage to blood vessels, which causes things like strokes. So the blood pressure is the pressure that's exerted on walls of arteries. The systolic pressure is the pressure in the system when the heart beats. The diastolic pressure is the pressure in the system when the heart relaxes. So normal blood pressure is 120 over 80. What increases pressure is what's called peripheral resistance. So if I stand here and squeeze my muscles tight, I increase resistance. So if you took my blood pressure whilst I was kind of tense like this, my blood pressure would be quite high. If let's say I took up sort of smoking every day, I started a day with a big sort of cooked breakfast and McDonald's for lunch and a bit more fat for evening meals, all the time sort of smoking and drinking, my arteries over time would begin to narrow. So that also increases that peripheral resistance. So when blood flows, it has a struggle to get through those arteries. So where that blood's struggling to get through those arteries, the heart just tries to beat much, much harder. So it raises the pressure in that whole system. It makes my blood vessels much more vulnerable. They're likely to bulge, they could become damaged. My organs start to become damaged. So the peripheral resistance increases when blood vessels become narrowed. Ignore that bit. So this bit talks briefly about the guidance levels that we work from. I've still got that 120 over 80 up there, which I think is probably quite relevant. This is from the NHS. So generally when we're providing sort of guidance, the NHS is a really good source because it's a credible source of information. So high blood pressure is considered to be 140 over 90 millimeters of mercury or higher. If you're over 80, it's natural that your blood pressure begins to drift up. Part of it is because as we get older, arteries begin to sort of slightly harden and they slightly narrow, part of that aging process. So we generally see an upwards drift in blood pressure. Ideal blood pressure is usually considered between 90 over 60 and 120 over 80. So there's quite a wide band. We don't sort of say 120 over 80 is perfect. I would say that anything sort of under that 120 over 80 is a real positive thing. So blood pressure readings between 120 over 80 and 140 over 90 could mean that you are at risk of developing high blood pressure if you don't take steps to control it. So we call this pre-hypertension. Generally, we don't worry too much about these people using our gyms, but we might start to suggest they maybe moderate their diets, maybe take steps to control stress, maybe limit caffeine intake, maybe try and do more aerobic exercise. So generally, that 120 over 80 is really key, but the one you really want to know is that 120 over 100. This is stage 1 hypertension. This is where we don't want people starting a gym program with us until they've been cleared with their GP. So this table you've got in your handbooks, the manual that I sent you on email the other day. So this just covers those levels. So what you can see on here is, if we annotate it, let's just draw in here. So here's my normal version. Okay, 120 over 80. So anything below that is a good thing. If it goes too low, there's not enough pressure in the system to push blood around the body. So anyone with a diastolic pressure of less than 60 can be termed what's known as hypotension. And sometimes those people may sort of experience dizziness, bit of tiredness and what have you. So you'd often suggest there may be something, some kind of condition that needs addressing. So some sort of illness like anemia, for example. We generally encounter people at the sort of upper ends of the scale. So I'm just going to clear off this bit here. There we go. So where we start to take more notice is when people get above 90, really. So here we've got stage 1 hypertension, where their diastolic pressure is over 90. So with that person, we'd write that 140. Word. Well, pen's running out of ink. Over 90. Really is running out. There we go, 90. So that's how we'd write it. The thing we're interested in is that bottom figure, that diastolic pressure. That represents that pressure in the system when the heart is refilling. So if that's still high, if when the heart is refilling and there's still tons of pressure in the system, it shows there's a constant strain on the blood vessels. The upper limit, that systolic pressure, is quite changeable. So for example, if I had an espresso or coffee, it might just push it up a little bit. The diastolic tends not to change sort of dramatically, but things like exercise, stress will put that systolic pressure up. So the one we're really interested in, the one that tells us really the underlying health of a person, is that diastolic pressure, that lower figure. So we start to sort of grade people's level of blood pressure, really most interested in that diastolic figure. So let's see how we get on with some quizzes. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quiz. After this quiz, I'm going to get you to fill in a little bit of your anatomy workbook, and then you should have finished that first section on the cardiovascular system. So I think we got quite a lot done this first week. So number 1, so fastest fingers then. Please pop your answers in the chat box. So I want you to look at these questions A to D. Which best describes the location of the heart? And I just want you to read through, and I want to see the first person to answer. Either just pop in the chat box A, B, C, or D. So let's see how quickly we can get this done. Which best describes the location of the heart? So all the answers up there. Fastest fingers, get going now, please. C, well done. Kyle, well done, Tiana, good stuff. So yes, so the location of the heart is behind the sternum, between the lungs, slightly left of center. So I think what's quite useful to show really is how closely packed in that area is. Do you remember on the previous slides we had, we showed the heart sort of in between the two. So sometimes heart problems lead over into sort of breathing difficulties. People get sort of kind of blood in their coughs. They get quite frothy sounding coughs. So there's a very close relationship between those two structures. Next question. Oh, there we are, a nice little picture of it there. You can see it located. You can see the bottom part sits just above this muscle called the diaphragm, which is our main muscle for breathing. So you may see that sometimes identified in relation to where the heart sits. Number 2, which is the thickest and most powerful chamber of the heart? This should be a good one for you to get. Let's see. Okay, anyone? Anyone? A, B, C, or D? Left atrium, right atrium, left ventricle, or right ventricle? Trying to work out if people have given me new answers or not. Okay, Arlis, well done. Well done. Oh, thickest and most powerful chamber. So think about it. It's going to be part of the systemic circulation. So blood is going to return to the right atrium. The right ventricle is going to pump it up to the lungs. It's going to return deoxygenated to the left atrium, and then it's going to be pumped out by the left what? So the thickest and most powerful chamber. Okay, 2 people made the same mistake. So the answer is the left ventricle. This is the one that changes. So this is the big, powerful pumping muscle. So let's move on to the next question, and then I'll get you a little picture. Which heart chamber pumps blood for the pulmonary circulation? So which is the powerful chamber that pumps up to our pulmonary circulation? D, good, Shiana, well done. Right ventricle, well done. So the right ventricle pumps to our lungs, so that means the left ventricle pumps to our body. So it's got to pump that much further. So our left ventricle is the blood vessel that pumps it's the thickest pump. It's the most powerful part of our heart. So the left ventricle is the systemic circulation. You're absolutely right. The right ventricle is for our pulmonary circulation. So this picture just shows it quite nicely. So just hone in on the, just locate the left atrium for me if you could. And then what you can see is on my picture here, I've got if we sort of start, let's say the left ventricle, I'm just sort of doing it in a kind of purple here. Remember that's kind of going up from that left ventricle and out via that aorta. So the left ventricle is at the bottom of the heart, but it kind of pumps upwards. So powerful contraction, left ventricle loops up and round, delivers it to the body through that systemic circulation, and then brings it up and round back into that right atrium. From the right atrium, it's passed through to the right ventricle, which pumps up to the lungs. So that should be pretty clear. Let's clear those drawings. Last couple of questions. So here, which artery does it use? So you should be able to see, okay, so the chamber that pumps blood for the pulmonary circulation is the right ventricle. So you should be thinking, which artery does that use, or which artery does it use? Well, it's in the name, that pulmonary artery. Next question. Which blood vessels have the thickest muscular wall? So it's not the one that's shown there. Not the one that's shown there. So thickest wall. What's your answer there, Tiana? I can't see. Well done, Luke. That's good. Yeah, well done. I think you corrected yourself, Tiana. Well done. Good. So the arteries are the thickest wall. So arteries, arterial. So the general scheme would be as blood vessels leave the heart, these are big arteries. So the main one is called the aorta, and that branches off into other big arteries, big thick muscular walls. Remember yesterday or Wednesday we talked about how those thick muscular walls can squeeze to direct blood flow. So they change blood flow. So for example, when we exercise, our blood vessels to our digestive system shut down, leaving more blood available for our working muscles. As blood goes through arteries, they narrow to become arterioles to slow blood flow slightly until they get to the thinnest capillaries. At the capillaries, blood drops off oxygen and nutrients to the tissues by diffusion, and then waste products like carbon dioxide comes back the other way. It gets picked up by tiny little venules, and what you can see on the picture there is a little valve in that vein. So venules move into into veins, and veins have got these little non-return valves, which means that when they're squeezed, blood is squeezed up through them and it can't pass back. So it helps get blood back into that central circulation. And there's the difference. So you can see the vein at the bottom, quite a thin wall, a limited layer of muscle. And then on the top, we've got that nice thick artery with a big thick muscular wall. So it's pumping blood under, or delivering blood under high pressure. That thick muscular wall just changes diameter ever so slightly. Okay, and lastly, which phase best describes systolic blood pressure? So work through all of those. Which phrase best describes systolic blood pressure? Anyone? You have got most of this PowerPoint. You've got most of it, but I've not given these questions on the version I've given you. So I'm happy to send this one out afterwards. It's not a problem. Kayla. Any ideas? So which phrase best describes systolic blood pressure? So remember, the systolic was the first figure, the diastolic was that second figure. So which is going to have the most pressure? Anyone? Okay, so the systolic pressure, is it the pressure of blood in the circulatory system when the heart is contracting, boom, or when it's refilling? The pressure of blood in the circulatory system when the heart is relaxing or refilling. Well, refilling is that diastolic pressure. So the systolic is the pressure in the system when the heart beats. So that's that higher figure. So A is the answer. And then lastly, this question asks, which of these blood pressure measures will be classified as stage 1 hypertension? So stage 1 hypertension. So 160 over 100, 120 over 80, 140 over 93, and 100 over 60. I'm going to give you one look at the table. There we are. Stage 1 hypertension. What's it going to be? Stage 1. Can you see it on there? So, which is it? Oh. A, B, C, or D? B's normal blood pressure on here. Stage 1. Stage 1 hypertension is 140/90. So pretty normal blood pressure actually for a lot of people. So stage 1 hypertension is 140/90. Normal blood pressure is 120/80. Okay. So what you're going to do for me. So what I'd like you to do, I'm going to finish up there. So hopefully you're pretty good at identifying the location of the heart. Hopefully you can describe the function of the heart. Hopefully you can describe the structure of the heart, how blood moves through those 4 chambers, the difference between the systemic and pulmonary circulation. You've given me some idea about the difference in structure and functions of blood vessels. You've defined blood pressure, and I'll give you a little time to work out how to identify blood pressure classifications. So what I want you to do now, I'm going to leave you to do two things for me. Number 1, what I'd like you to do is complete those tasks 1, 2, and 3, and you're going to either post or email them to me. That's your most important task. Number 2, what I want you to do now is complete the first section on the cardiovascular system of your Unit 1 workbook. So what you're going to do now, you did for me the other day, you did the first 2 pages up to the section on page 5 right at the bottom where it says what is meant by the term blood pressure. So I want you to quickly write in what you mean by the term blood pressure, and then using your course book, so the manual, I want you to complete that last page. So there's a little task on the bottom. It asks you to identify the blood pressure classification that's being discussed there. The information is in the manual that I gave you. It's around between page 40 and 45. So I sent a document that's called FI Instructor Manual or something. It's a big PDF. If you haven't got it, I'm happy to send it out if you just drop me an email. But I sent it all out the other day. So that's your job. Just those 2 questions. Tell me what blood pressure is and answer the question on the classification. But importantly, you finished task 1, 2, and 3 for that Unit 26. Any questions on that? You don't have a 1-unit notebook. Kai, yes, I can send you an electronic version, Kai, if that's okay, if you've got capacity to edit on a Word document. I'll send it and then we'll discuss over email if that's okay. Any other questions, or are you all happy? Can someone give me a thumbs up to make sure you're happy? Okay. Right, if that's the case, I'm going to leave you to get on with that. I'll look forward to receiving the units 1, 2, and 3. Hopefully, you're good with that, and I'll see you fairly soon. Okay, I'll let you crack on, and I'm here for the next hour. I'll send Kai the notebook. Let me know if anyone else needs that notebook. Otherwise, thank you for your efforts this week. It's been really appreciated, and nice to see lots of interaction in the chat box. So very well done, everybody. Thank you so much for your efforts, and I look forward to seeing you next week. So remember your BKSB as well. I'll send out a little message to remind you all of that. But otherwise, thank you very much for your efforts. Good luck with the parts 1, 2, and 3, and good luck with those 2 questions. I'll be here. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Take care. Okay, thank you for everyone that sent me work. It's been really good actually. So keep it coming. I say let me know if you need any help again. Kayla, does that answer your question? What I sent through. I'll look forward to receiving all your stuff. Lamar, I think you sent me through your work, so that's brilliant. So you've got your reference. That's great. Yeah, so just try and think now if you can add one more reference into there, and that'll be fantastic. Troy, you just sent me through something as well. Perfect. Okay, right, everyone. I'll shut my video off. I think I'm sort of looking out of the sun anyway, so you can't see me. But I'm available on chat. I'm also available via email, so hopefully you can get hold of me. Okay, take care.